What is good, guys? It's Rey-Jay back with another video, and in this one I want to talk about what's going on with SPY and the QQQ, break down the technicals on them just very briefly, make a very quick video for Friday, and then talk about what on earth happened today, what you should be watching for going to next week based off how we closed. But before I do anything like this, before I talk about what happened to the market and whether or not we could see a bullish continuation, let me just mention a couple of things before starting. I am firstly not a financial planner, so make sure you take none of this as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out the Moomoo link, which is down below and in the description. If you sign up for Moomoo, the link down below, and deposit $100 into the account, you're guaranteed 5 free stocks with a $50 cash reward. The offer ends in about 13 days, so check it out before they run out. With that out of the way, let's get on with the video. All right, so looking at SPY, this thing has a very interesting looking setup so far. There's a potential inverse head and shoulders like structure. But the real question is, could we continue to break out? And in order for that to happen, we have to break some key resistance. Now, there are some interesting things we could say about today that were quite fascinating and very telling about how the market could move for next week. But this will be dependent on what kind of pieces of news come out and also how the market ends up moving. But first, let's talk about this. So on SPY, basically, we had a lot of puts expiring. That's one thing I just wanted to mention about today. We had 439 being max pain, and the market makers were incentivized to hold the market up, according to what I told you earlier, and according to this data. The market makers would have benefited more if they got us to close at 439, but they couldn't really get us all the way up there since we actually opened up very close to like the lower 430s. So what they did instead was help us pump and just let us continue pumping. They tried to get a big pump at the very end. We actually hit 437.5, but we ended up closing at like 436, which is still not bad whatsoever. Now, looking at the data, I actually have like private data I could just talk about. And basically what happened was we saw lots of aggressive buyers today. We actually saw lots of algos shifting in favor of the buying. And all the algos getting these like switches, they're basically telling us that there's a high probability of continuation going into next week. Now, the thing about that is, let me just mention that for next week, we have Jackson Hole with Jerome Powell speaking. And Jerome Powell is going to say some really big things. I don't know if Powell is going to cause a massive rug pull in the markets or not. So there is the possibility of that. And also, don't forget that we have Nvidia's earnings coming out very soon. And this stock could move the whole market, or at least play a big role in dictating the overall momentum that the market may have. So looking at Nvidia, this thing started pumping at the very end, getting back into its little channel right here. So that's a very good sign for it. If we want to just like expand this, looks very nice. Got a little drop. It came right back into this channel. And now we're going to be watching for a potential breakout associated with earnings. So with earnings, okay, as we approach it, we have a tendency of seeing this thing pump approaching it. Nvidia could start pumping very nicely and hit some high levels now, since we do have a potential bullish structure that developed as we got back into this channel. With this flag forming, we might see Nvidia break out. There's a chance that that could help drag the market up. So there is a catalyst that could help the market. And then on top of that, I just want to mention that Aapl, I don't think I charted Aapl enough on TradingView, but I'm just going to look at it just for a second. Looking at Aapl, this is not looking that bad whatsoever. We were talking about these levels this morning. It was looking quite nice, got a nice potential breakout area from here, respecting a nice uptrend. It didn't actually respect this trend line that well, but it did continue to push. And if anything, I would say that it's in a very nice place for next week. Now, when you look at the way Aapl looked, it was very oversold not too long ago. It was looking like it just took a massive beating, and it was due for a very nice bounce, right? It formed a bullish divergence. So when you have two giants that dictate the whole market, like Nvidia and Aapl, showing signs of strength and potential breakout potential, this is a very good sign. We formed a very nice bullish divergence here, by the way. We ended up pushing. We got some decent volume. It wasn't like the best volume, but it was quite decent. And now what I'm going to be looking at is, could we be forming kind of like an inverse head and shoulders like structure, like where we gap up. We gap down here and get one more balance, and we see Aapl just try to break out a little bit more. Now, the thing about this is, maybe we're forming like a cup and handle. Maybe Aapl wants to break out, okay? Maybe it wants to. But that does not mean that when you look at, like, for example, I don't know, the 30 minutes time frame, right? That does not mean that Apple is going to start exploding to high levels. It does not mean that whatsoever. This is just a technical bounce. The overall trend on Apple, let's zoom out, is still bearish. We're still looking bearish. We're still making, these lower highs over and over again since August started. It's been just dropping and dropping. So I'm not going to turn into a mega bull when this happens. We could always see something like this play out where Apple basically tries to get a rebound, and I'm going to draw this out for SPY as well, but it like tries to break out. Maybe it does get a breakout early this week or going into next week, I mean, and we hit this resistance up here to try to fill this imbalance. So we have this imbalance up here on 177. Apple hits 177 to 178, but then we get hit by this resistance. Maybe this could happen for the first couple of days. It may take a little longer. I think I drew this kind of bad. Let me just redraw this. So it may happen like a lot slower. Maybe more like this, just slowly uptrends and eventually makes its way up to about these imbalance levels. Maybe it gets a little bit above this resistance, and then we see Apple start to slide. Maybe we have Jerome Powell speaking at Jackson Hole, and he causes the whole market to just sink down. And Jerome Powell comes, and then boom, Apple comes right back down and starts sinking lower, and the whole market starts to follow it. That is a possibility. What if Nvda does not do well for its earnings? What if that causes another rug pull for the markets? That could be another catalyst. So I just want to note there that does not mean that the market is just going to keep going just because I'm saying that it has potential for a bounce. It could bounce a little bit and then hit resistance and come right back down. Okay, you have to be ready for this because we have Jerome Powell speaking soon. You never know what the guy's going to say. But going back to SPY and the QQQ now, I just want to mention that, there's some important levels that I'm going to be eyeing for next week. I mean, the two possibilities, okay, are we get one last drop because of bad news before we get a bounce at this like 431 area. That is a possibility, but it's looking less likely as we have a nice inverse head and shoulder structure already developed. And we saw lots of aggressive buyers coming in that want to push this thing up. So there are two possibilities on SPY basically. Number one is going to be something like this, where it comes down and it just starts pushing like this, and we start pushing thanks to Nvda, thanks to Aapl, and all these different things. It starts pushing for this like 440 area. Could it get to 442 to 444? There's a possibility of that too. I'm not sure if it's going to go that high, but there is a chance they might try to cause like a mini squeeze. But like I was saying earlier, guys, what if Nvidia's earnings is not that great? What if Jerome Powell comes in, rug pulls the markets? It could reject here and come right back down after Powell speaks, and he could drag this thing back down to these lows, and we could see SPY continue even lower than this and make its way down to like 431 or so. Now, if that's the case, right, I just want to make it clear that just because I'm calling some upside, a little bounce, it does not mean I'm a mega bull, because look at the trend. When you look at this trend, there were instances where this thing was dropping. It got a little bounce, like this moment right here, forming this ascending wedge. Then it started dropping, got another bounce here, and it continued dropping. So something like this would not be out of the ordinary, but it's worth noting at the very least. It could even go a little higher to like 444, maybe like barely touch this before getting into the rejection. 444 is going to be tough resistance, so is 442, but at 444 is going to be the toughest one. We will see how high it goes, and we will see what Nvidia and Jerome Powell end up causing. Now, there's another possibility, and this will depend on the news, that we get one last drop before the market gets a bounce, because you would be anticipating some buyers to step in around 431.5 to like 430. So there's a possibility that the market sells off one more time on Monday. We get down to 430 to 431, and then we get the bounce, and then we see the breakout, and we see the market just start pushing and pushing and pushing to these higher levels. We get like a really technical balance that's super aggressive, but then somewhere here, the market ends up just subsiding because of Powell or Nvidia's earnings or something, who knows what, and then we eventually come down later. So that's like another possibility. And I think right now, seeing what happened with the data, seeing how the algos adjusted, and seeing this potential inverse head and shoulder structure on SPY, I think that because we sold off so hard, getting a bounce like this would not be out of the ordinary. So I'm leaning more in the direction of this green line playing out. I'm leaning a little bit more in this in favor of this, and we'll see if this truly happens on Monday, but it just looks more likely like this thing's going to just try to keep going temporarily before getting a big rejection, then coming back down. I'm leaning more in this direction. I want to be as honest as possible with everyone. Now, going back, I just want to talk about the triple Q. Looking at the QQQ, the same thing could be said about it. There's a possible nice structure here. It basically temporarily broke below its key resistance at 357, which became support now, and it's forming another like inverse head and shoulders like structure. So the triple Q, the Nasdaq, could get one little pop before we continue lower. That is a real possibility. This looks more bullish to me, this chart. It looks like it's going to try to do something like this. Just like SPY, there are two possibilities. Number one, well, the more bearish possibility would be like this thing breaks down and gets like a double bottom at 355 or something. Maybe it goes a little bit lower before doing it, but that seems very unlikely. I think that this is very, very unlikely to happen. And then we get the bounce later, thanks to Nvda, and then we just get like a nice rejection and then just come down from there. But this is just a hypothetical example, right? Something like this is possible technically depending on the news, but I see it as very, very unlikely. I think what's more likely to happen is this. We have like a left shoulder, a head, and then like a right shoulder is kind of like forming already. We could see the market just start pushing. We could see the QQQ just start pushing as soon as Monday, thanks to Nvda and Aapl as well. And this thing just goes to these much higher levels, trades a little sideways for some time. Then we start pushing to 363 to 365. Then we get a rejection. And then by the time Powell speaks or something, we could always reject and come right back down to these low levels. Who knows what Powell is going to say? Who knows? It could be something else that causes this. There could be some other big news coming. It could be because of the Fitch downgrade. Something could cause the market to reject. Maybe it's going to be Nvidia's earnings. Who knows what it's going to be? And then we might see something like this on the triple Q. I'm leaning more in favor of the green line right here. I think this is a lot more probable, but just to be safe, be open-minded to anything and watch each of the levels. All right, so I just want to keep this video kind of short for Friday. This is just like a fun video for SPY and the QQQ. Do what you have to do, guys. Thank you all so much for listening. Have a great day. Market to the moon because the long term is very bright despite these fluctuations. And I'll see you guys very soon. Enjoy the weekend, guys. Thank you and peace out.